Nearly every DJ's journey starts with one of these, a DJ controller. But eventually, you're likely wanting to transition to using equipment like this, the club standard Pioneer CDJ setup. The issue is there are some huge differences all DJs need to be aware of when transitioning to these. If you make it to the end of this video, we have a little surprise for you, so stick around. Something to be aware of right away is that CDJs are actually 3 separate bits of equipment. As you can see, we have the 2 CDJs and the mixer, and those 3 bits of equipment need to talk to each other if we're going to send information such as waveforms, the BPM, even the music that's loaded on your USB between the 2 different CDJs. So, along the back of each CDJ, you'll find something called a link port, and this is an Ethernet connection. This data cable sends that information between one CDJ to another and even to the mixer. Now, if there is no link cable plugged in, you'll get this error sign, or you might not be able to send that information. So, for example, you need to get familiar with loading tracks onto 2 USBs, as you can see here and here. So you always have independent tracks on both players. With the link cable plugged in, you can access music from both USB drives on each CDJ. It also sends the BPM and waveform information between the 2. So if you rely on things like syncing, using the beat sync buttons here, then that is information that has to be sent between the 2 CDJs. Also, a lot of DJs, when starting out, will rely on having the stacked waveforms on their DJ software. Now, this isn't always the case. On the latest CDJ models, you will see that the stacked waveforms are on top of each other with the link cable plugged in. And you can see slightly when they're in time or out of time. But if I were to unplug a link cable and load some new tracks in, we're not going to get that stacked waveform as before. There are no stacked waveforms. Again, if I try and beat sync the 2, we get this error saying no linked players found, please check connections. So because these are 3 separate units, that link cable makes a big difference as to how you operate a mix. So I would recommend not relying on the visuals and those stacked waveforms to get your beat matching and timing right. Get used to it with 2 separate waveforms because they have been separated here on CDJs. And again, on the older models, it's not as clear as it is here when they are linked. On DJ controllers, 90% of them have touch capacitive jog wheels. If we do it slowly like this, we can affect the beat match and we can make it faster and slower. And it doesn't actually matter how fast you adjust the jog wheel. It just works off how much you adjust the jog wheel. This is quite different on CDJs. Let's go take a look. On CDJs, these jog wheels are mechanical jog wheels, which means they respond slightly differently. Let me prove this to you. If we set the same beat off on both sides, let's just put them in time. Now they're running in time with each other. However, if I were to nudge the jog wheel in the same way as on the controller like this, it's not adjusting, and this should be putting it out of time, but it's not. Now listen when I go a bit faster. This affects it. So actually, if you're moving from controller to CDJs, get used to, on your controller first, doing sharp nudges like this and controlling the beat match on your controller, because this is how you want to operate the CDJs. And this is simply because CDJs were designed off the back of turntables. And with turntables, it's got a spinning platter on it with the vinyl moving around. And to make that record go faster, you physically had to push it faster than it was spinning. So they've replicated that. So you have to push it faster than the track's actually theoretically playing. So keep that in mind, practice on your controller doing sharp nudges like this. This is something we dive deep into in all our beginner courses, especially when using DJ controllers. Oh, by the way, if these tips are already proving to be valuable, make sure to check out our complete DJ package. With this, you will learn how to become a pro DJ using your DJ controller with hardware and software specific courses, but then transition with ease to the club setup of CDJs with our CDJ Masterclass, How to Get Gigs course, and over 50 hours of bonus content. Just click the link. Another thing with CDJs is the effects channel works very differently to on controllers, and there's one big thing that people usually get caught out by. You see on the top here, there's a flashing BPM value, and this is trying to read what the BPM of the playing track that's assigned on the channel is. So if I flick this channel over to channel 3 and then play this song, it jumps down to 120, 122, 23, 24, and then goes up to 125. Now, this goes back to the link cable. If the link cable is plugged in on the back, you can automatically quantize it using the quantize here. However, it's unlikely in a lot of clubs that this is always linked. So it's always trying to determine the BPM. You can manually override this by tapping the BPM in, but what I prefer is holding the tap button and then using this time knob here to scroll manually up and down the different BPM values to match it. If you're at a decimal place, like 0.4, we can hold tap and auto tap, and then we get the decimal place value as well. And we can set that exact. The other thing to watch out for is if you're using an effect and we're somewhere between two beat values, you can see that they're both flashing. It won't sound great. Doesn't sound on beat. So make sure you are set on a specific beat value, like a half, a quarter, an eighth. The reason why it'll be between two is if the time here, this is something not found on most controllers, the time has been manually adjusted or the BPM's changed since the last time you used it, and it'll sit between two, sounding offbeat. So just to recap, make sure you're on a definite beat value like half or three quarters, and make sure your BPM is correct. You can easily switch it back to auto by tapping this button, but be aware that it might take a few seconds to try and determine what the BPM is, and you might need it quicker than that. You'd be surprised at just how many times we get emails of people asking, how do I get my SoundCloud, Tidal, Beatport, BeatSource music onto my USB drive so I can go plug it in on the CDJs? Now, at the time of recording this, you cannot do that. A streaming song can't be exported as a file onto a USB drive. So if you rely on streaming at home with your DJ controller and your DJ software, then be aware that you can't transfer those songs to USB. Now, again, at the time of recording this, Beatport has an integration with the CDJs, but it requires that the link cable is also connected to a router, and that router is connected wired into the internet so that it can provide internet to the CDJs. Again, very, very rare that this will happen in most, 95% of clubs around the world. So you can't rely on that integration wholeheartedly. If you know that there is internet connected to the CDJs that you're going to be playing on, then you can log into your Beatport account on the CDJs. And there is a way to do that without having your laptop plugged in. But for most DJs, I would recommend getting some locally stored files, making sure that you have some music that you have physically downloaded if you intend on using USBs. Now, if you're set on using streaming services, you'll need to plug your laptop in. Again, in our CDJ Masterclass course, we show you how to get your laptop plugged in effectively using Serato, Rekordbox, Traktor, Virtual DJ, any of the DJ software, so you can use it effectively with CDJs with your laptop plugged in, therefore accessing streaming services. You'll still need an internet connection unless you have offline locker, but something important to bear in mind. The great thing about DJ controllers is they have so many features, and you get so much for your money when you're buying something like an entry-level controller. You have all the usual things like hot cues, looping, but also you have other pad modes like Pad Effects 1, Beat Jump, Sampler, and then even in the shift controls we have things like keyboard mode and key shift mode. Depending on your controller as well, for example, the Flex 4 has a smart CFX and it has a smart fader function which is unique to this controller. If we were to move over to the Flex 10, this has dedicated stems buttons up here. So some controllers have an abundance of features, but if you start to rely on them, it gets a bit tricky when you move over to CDJs. The performance features you currently have available to you on the latest model of CDJs are hot cues. We have 8 of them. We've got looping controls with auto loop 4 and 8. We also have beat jump controls. And then within the screen, you have key shift, which is a bit more unique. There's a beat jump within the screen and there is beat loop within the screen. Other than that, most of the performance features found on DJ controllers are not found on CDJs. So think about that when practicing at home, preparing your music, and the kind of sets you're putting together. Are you relying on all of those extra performance features to enhance your set? Can you limit your set down but still be creative just using hot cues, looping, maybe some beat jump and key shifting as well? As promised, we like to reward those who stick around for the whole video, and today's is a giveaway for the complete package I mentioned earlier. If you're ready to win a lifetime of learning, all you need to do is comment below which of these 5 tips was your favorite. Good luck, thanks for watching, and make sure to watch this video to see some more CDJ tips and tricks.